Well, we are ready for a huge, not just an ordinary weekend, a huge weekend of championship fights all over the globe. And we are doing this live, people, on a Thursday afternoon on YouTube. It is the Big Fight Weekend Preview on YouTube. Now, I should say for our podcast audience, you're hearing it in the normal rundown Thursday night late into Friday. But we went ahead and did this live, people, on YouTube. So you got to be engaged with us on the YouTube channel for Big Fight Weekend. I'm merely the somewhat capable host, TJ Rives. We're here on video. Hello, Big Dan Rafael, who you see is not in his normal office setup. No. The office this weekend is Las Vegas, Nevada, for the return of Manny Pacquiao. Big Dan, how are you? Always good to be with you, but especially good when you're OL on location.
My office, it's sort of like I take the approach of like Air Force One. Wherever I am, that's my
that is the office. You're in the office, baby. Like my man Denzel Washington in Training Day. You kind of look like you have like the Asian feel to the room, to the villa there with the whole. I like this. I like the setup in the background.
It's just there's like a little like I don't know what you call that, like a separation.
Yes.
Between where the bed is and then there's a little area where there's a couch.
Exactly. If you wanted a little privacy, if somebody else was there, but it's
like
just
a small
you.
partition, I guess.
All right. So you are right there on scene. Again, thank you for finding us on YouTube. Listen, help us out. A great deal of you have found the YouTube page in the last 60 days or so. Subscribe, hit like. That will help us out. You've been engaging with these previews and podcasts or recaps. Keep doing that. Keep hitting the comments down below the video. I know a lot of you are commenting already. I see them, Dan. They're commenting already on the live show. But if you comment on the actual video down below, that helps us with the algorithm. Give us some opinions. Give us some takes. If you think I'm an idiot, if you think Ray feels the greatest, whatever, put it down there on the comments, even if you're watching us later on. We did it live on Tuesday afternoon, but I fully understand a lot of you are seeing it Thursday afternoon, Thursday night. If you're seeing it Friday, whatever, make some comments on the video. The preview is going to last all the way into the weekend here for the Vegas fight card, for the Usyk-Dubois rematch in London. We're going to preview all of that here on the show. So thank you. Help us out. And again, when the fights are over on Saturday night, I won't say what time, but we will have a recap, a brief YouTube recap after everything is over on Saturday night. So stay engaged on this page. And if you are subscribed, you'll get a notification. Hit the bell, you'll get a notification. Hey, they're going live. They're going live after Saturday night, after the Pacquiao fight card's over, after the Bam Rodriguez fight card's over. We'll go live for a little while here on the channel. All right, so as I mentioned, you are there. You have been there about 24 hours or more in Las Vegas as we do this live. What's the buildup like right now as Manny Pacquiao is returning after a 4-year layoff at 46 years of age? You were around them at the press conference on Wednesday. What's it been like?
It was kind of like Back to the Future, I felt like, because it's been 4 years since Manny has had a fight, TJ, and it was almost like no time had passed. You look up on the dais where everybody was situated, and it's the band is back together. There's Manny looking good. There's Freddie Roach, his trainer. There's Boo Boy Fernandez, also one of the trainers, Manny's longtime right-hand man, confidant, however you want to describe him. And, good press turnout, as is not a surprise. A lot of the YouTube guys, it was pretty striking that on a Wednesday there was a lack of what I would consider mainstream media, and those of us who spent a lot of years in the mainstream media who aren't necessarily in mainstream media anymore, like myself, my boy Lance Pugmire, et cetera, we were there. But they're what you would call mainstream media. I didn't notice really anybody, unfortunately, there, other than my ringside colleagues that have made the trip from the Philippines. They always come along for Manny Pacquiao. So they were there in force. And look, the hotel was, as Manny talked about on a few occasions during his remarks, his 16th fight at the MGM Grand Garden Arena that will take place on Saturday. So he has a very deep and long history with this property. Had some of his biggest performances, his biggest nights of his career in this building. And, I've covered a million fights here, but it's cool to be back for a Pacquiao fight, even though I'm still not quite sure how I feel about him coming out of retirement at age 46.
And we'll get into that point here in a couple of moments. I know what you're saying because, it used to be, and we're not being get off our lawn guys here, but I mean, it used to be ESPN would be there live throughout a big fight week. including not just the heavyweight title, but a Pacquiao and Oscar De La Hoya, a Floyd Mayweather. They would be live. Back in the day when like CNN cared about sports and they had CNN Sports Tonight with the late Fred Hickman and the late Nick Charles, they would be there live all the time. All the biggest newspapers would be there live. Newspapers don't basically exist anymore except online. So I can understand where it's kind of bizarre. It's not what it was even 10 years ago, much less 15 or 20 years ago, right?
It doesn't necessarily make it worse. It's just not, like you said, it's so pigeonholed now. It's got such a, and it's not just boxing. A lot of sports and some other events are similarly where there's a little more focus and it's not as widespread. But with boxing, it's very pronounced. I mean, I remember the days of coming to Vegas for these fights in that exact same room downstairs in the AB studio ballrooms where they have most of the press conferences. And you walk in and you look around, and I would see the newspaper reporters from all over the country, the Boston papers, multiple Boston papers, multiple New York papers, multiple Philadelphia papers, Washington, D.C., the Associated Press, L.A., multiple L.A. area papers, Dallas, Houston, Baltimore. I was there from USA Today, later for ESPN. They would have people there. And I dare say I didn't see a single one of them.
It's crazy.
Together fight. But hey, listen, we're here. I'm here. I don't care.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. All right. So you kind of mentioned this about the buzz. I know it's only Thursday. What do you perceive? And do you perceive that Vegas and the turnout and the interest level will ramp up, or is it too early for you to perceive that on Thursday afternoon for Pacquiao? Because he was the biggest of big deals for a lot of these, as you mentioned. What are you seeing? What do you think?
I mean, for every single fight of consequence, it always does ramp up as you get closer to the fight. There's only been really a handful of fights I can think of that you really felt like you're already in like the vortex on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. That's not this fight. I mean, it'll get its attention, and there definitely be some interest, and there definitely are fans around already. As one example, I went to have dinner with my boy Pugmire last night, and if we wanted like a regular table at the restaurant, it was going to be an hour wait. So there's people here. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
We took the high top, so we only had to wait like a few minutes. But even still, I'm just making the point that a lot of people say Vegas is dead. There's fewer tourists because of different things related either to immigration issues or the economy or whatever you want to talk about. From my perception of just walking through the airport and coming into the hotel yesterday, there's a lot of people here. I mean, it's, it may not be as packed and crowded as maybe it had been at other times, but there's still quite a bit of buzz and stuff going on here. And, but this fight was never going to have that kind of massive kind of crowd because Pacquiao has been out of sight, out of mind. This is not, Canelo versus Floyd or some big fight like that, Triple G against Canelo, something that was, the masses had been dying for years. But Manny still has a fan base, and it's got a heck of an undercard, which we'll talk about. There are a bunch of Australians here who have come out for Tszyu. I noticed a lot of accents and saw a lot of my Australian colleagues in the media center also to chat with them about it. So I'm happy to be here for this fight.
Let's pick it up on that point before we get to the undercard. The intrigue here is, and we don't know, Pacquiao has not been in the ring, and you were there ringside for the last time he was in the ring, which was August of 2021. And he didn't look particularly good, didn't look particularly sharp. I'm just going to say, I'm going to keep it real. He got beat by a B-level fighter that night, I believe, in Yordenis Ugas. Okay, so the big question is, what's going to be different when you're 4 years older, you're 46? We've seen this with guys coming back after years and years away from the ring at an advanced age. That is the question, right, for this. What do we suspect we're going to see here from Manny Pacquiao?
Nobody knows, TJ.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. I mean, he can look good on a video where they show him sparring or, hitting mitts or doing his road work up the mountain in Los Angeles as he's getting ready and doing his training. But you don't know how it's going to be when the actual bell rings. I mean, I go back and think of fights, when Manny Pacquiao fought Oscar De La Hoya, as an example. And everything was supposed to be going great in Oscar's camp, and they would show you a couple clips, and he would do the interviews, and everything sounded good. And okay, still Oscar, still coming off a win, even if it was a little shaky against Steve Forbes. He's a humongous favorite against a much smaller Manny Pacquiao, who was coming up in weight to fight him. And when they got in the ring, he got savaged. He had nothing left, and so we have no idea what the situation with Pacquiao. I know, and I've made this point to a couple people who asked me about it yesterday. I forget exactly when it was, but it was within the last year when Pacquiao had that exhibition bout against a kickboxer. Now, his team will tell you he didn't train 2 days for the fight, but I still know what I saw. I saw an old, slow, faded guy get hit with everything by a guy that wasn't even a boxer, had no timing, had no reflexes, and it's kind of sad to see. And it was only a 4-round fight, but you can. I didn't need 4 rounds to see what I was to understand what I was seeing. Now, I guarantee you, Manny Pacquiao clearly is taking this a lot more seriously. This is an actual fight. He's fighting for a major world championship. He's back in a place where he has immense amount of history and a relationship with here at this building and in this city. It's a totally different situation, but his body doesn't necessarily know that. I mean, just because he's in Las Vegas and he's fighting for a world title doesn't mean his legs are going to do any better or his reflexes are going to be any better. I suspect he trained a lot harder, obviously, but we just don't know the answer. I mean, we know he's done things unexpectedly in the past and done things that he wasn't supposed to do, like the way he destroyed De La Hoya. And he is one of the most legendary fighters of all time. And he's facing an opponent in Mario Barrios, who's a good fighter. He's got a world title. He's been in some excellent fights, but Mario is not a pound-for-pound type of guy. Good fighter and exciting, but he's not at the level of most of the opponents that Manny has faced through the last literally 20 years.
And I know you just interviewed him. We're plugging away. He was in a life and death battle with Abel Ramos back in November on the undercard of Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, in a fight where he got knocked down. He even said to you in the interview that he doesn't really remember a lot of the middle of the fight because after the knockdown, he was basically out concussed while fighting. He had to go back and watch on video because he doesn't remember. That ain't good. And right. So now you don't know what you're getting with him is my point too in this fight with Barrios.
We're getting a much fresher guy than Pacquiao. And he also knocked down against Ramos in that fight. But that's the point though. He's a much younger guy by 16 years. He's a much taller fighter, he's a much longer fighter, he's been more active. And we don't have to beat the dead horse about Father Time is undefeated.
Yep.
But it's a fact of that's just the reality. So I have used the analogy, and we've seen this with other examples. The Oscar example I just used. You want to go way back to when Muhammad Ali fought Larry Holmes, and he had done a good job of getting down to the getting his weight down, and his body looked pretty good, and all the things that went into that fight. And we saw what happened there, where Holmes savaged him, the older fighter.
Ali that night had nothing at 38 years of age. We've referenced that over and over again. Yep.
And Manny's now 46. So the point I'm making though is, it's like if you have a beautiful car and you give it a great paint job and you spiff it up with a nice wax job and you tint the windows, they look all pretty, you get those rims looking all sweet, and then you take it out for the drive and you realize there's nothing under the hood. That's what may be the case. We don't know, but maybe Manny has looked good in camp. He looked sharp for a round or two hitting the midst or whatever the limited amount that we were able to see. You talk to him, he sounds confident. He didn't seem offended that he was the underdog. He understands why. But it wouldn't be a shock if, we took the car out for a spin and, you
he's got nothing left.
Sign and then there's a clunk and there's nothing left under the hood. And that's what we're here to find out.
All right. Very good. We're going to get into the undercard in a couple of moments. A lot of live audiences joining us as we go. Yeah.
If he does win, I mean, it's a monumental victory. He's going to set a lot he's going to be the second oldest fighter in boxing history to win a world title. He'll fall a couple years shy of what Bernard Hopkins did the second time he won a light heavyweight title in his when he was age 48, breaking the 46 record. He'll also become he'll break his own record as the oldest welterweight world champion. He did that at age 40 against your man Keith Thurman. He'll be obviously much older than that in this particular case, and he'll add yet another.
I'm going to give you one to think about. Does he become the first Hall of Famer to ever win a world title after going into the Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
Now, he just went into the Hall of Fame, and he has a chance to win a world title.
Yeah, he won't be the first fighter to come back after being elected to the Hall of Fame to have a fight. There's been a handful of those guys. Mm-hmm. But as you said, he will be the first one to come back and win a world title.
Would be
the guys who otherwise did it, guys like Sugar Ray Leonard and Alexis Arguello and Virgil Hill and the great Zuma Nelson and Jeff Fennick, who fought each other. All of them came back post being inducted into the Hall of Fame, but they weren't fighting in world championship fights.
Yep. And Manny just went in June to the International Boxing Hall of Fame. All right, we'll get into the undercard in a couple of moments. For all the live audience, thank you for finding us. We're doing this live on YouTube Thursday afternoon. Again, for the pod audience, it was the same for you. This is the preview with Dan out in Las Vegas. We need to say to the video audience that we are brought to you in part by our friends at ppv.com. Don't forget that you can watch this fight with no long-term subscription necessary on ppv.com. Catch the return of 46-year-old Manny Pacquiao on Saturday night through ppv.com. They've got the outstanding 4K video. They've got interactive stuff going on all throughout the fight card. We're about to talk about the undercard, the co-feature and the undercard. You see there Sebastian Fundora and Tszyu in a rematch, Pitbull Cruz and Angel Fierro in a rematch, all that on the undercard. Again, no 6-month subscription, no year-long subscription. Buy what you want with ppv.com. They are sponsors of ours here as part of our coverage on the Big Fight Weekend show and pod. So again, utilize ppv.com for the pay-per-view purchase of Pacquiao-Barrios and the entire card for Saturday. And you see right there, just the website, ppv.com. Hang out there throughout the entire fight night. Great interaction, and we love them, and we thank them for sponsoring us here as part of this. All right, so I mentioned Fundora and Tszyu do have their rematch of a fight, March of a year ago, where Tszyu got gashed badly on the forehead accidentally by Fundora's elbow and then bled, Dan, and bled, and it was gruesome. And eventually he lost a decision to Fundora. And I'm gonna say he's kind of been in a funk since then. He got later knocked out last October in a bout with Bakram Murtazalayev in Orlando. He's come back and had one fight since then to kind of reestablish himself. Fundora, meanwhile, has had one title defense and an impressive knockout. Now they meet again here in a rematch for the junior middleweight world title. All right, so you were around these guys on Wednesday at the press conference, etc. Give me a little more on the Towering Inferno, Sebastian Fundora, 6 feet plus as a junior middleweight, fighting Tszyu.
Well, actually, just for the record, was not around them because yesterday was the press conference for the main event.
All right.
But in any event, the first fight was terrific, but that was basically because of what you mentioned about the injury and the gash that happened, because in the first couple of rounds, I know there was still a long way to go potentially, but I felt like Tszyu had totally dominated and was, hurting Fundora and maybe getting ready to stop him in the early rounds. But then what happened with the gash on his head, and Fundora was a little bit touched up also because he had a injured nose that bled pretty badly as well. So by the time they got to round 12, these guys are literally covered in blood. It looked like a murder scene, like a horror movie. And as Tim has talked about, like basically from like rounds 3 to 10, the blood was so bothersome that he was sort of out of his game. He was able to get it together a little bit in the last couple of rounds, but in the end, he did lose a split decision, cost him not only his world title, but they were also fighting for what was at the time the vacant WBC belt. Remember, it was supposed to be Fundora in an interim fight on the undercard. Thurman got injured and was out of the fight 10 days or so notice, and so Fundora and Tszyu agreed to fight each other to save the show, and both titles became on the line. And it was one of the most memorable fights of all of the year. And it was definitely the bloodiest, goriest fight I have seen in maybe my whole career, to be quite honest with you. I mean, it was just that bad. Anyway, so they move on to other things. And as you mentioned, Fundora, for reasons that I'm still not totally clear about, because he said to me when we did a Zoom call for our interview before he came back and fought the Cordell Booker fight that was not that long ago, in his first fight in 1 year, he said his nose wasn't really that bad. It was like, he needed like a week or two to heal up and he was fine. He just took some time off, his prerogative, I guess. He came back, he looked fine, knocking out Cordell Booker. And at that point, you're thinking, okay, he's going to fight his mandatory in the WBO, which is Xander Zayas, who was ringside. They took pictures there after the fight. They talked about fighting each other. The two sides were negotiating between PBC, Samson Lukowicz, and Top Rank. And all right, so that'd be a fine fight. And then suddenly, no, we're not doing that fight. We're taking a rematch with Tszyu, who, even though the fight had been, a year earlier, apparently had a rematch right, even though it allowed Fundora to take the interim bout, which he did. In the meantime, Tim had fought twice. He had the horrible knockout loss to Bakram, where he just got bounced off the canvas.
I was there.
I
was there. It was shocking. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. And then he had the win over Joey Spencer, which was supposed to theoretically set him up to re-put together the fight with Keith Thurman. That didn't end up happening. So here we are back at the Fundora fight. Now I'm not complaining because that headlined a pay-per-view the last time out. Now it's the co-feature, so you're getting a little more bang for your buck, I guess. Should be another great fight. Both guys have been talking about in the build-up. It's going to be another war. Tim's talking about it's like round 13. I need to get my revenge. I need to rewrite history because of what happened in the first fight. Fundora is a very confident fighter also. I mean, this is a fight, to be quite honest. I mean, as much as I'm intrigued by what's going to happen with Pacquiao and Barrios for a variety of different reasons. Just from the sheer like action perspective and just like what happened the first time, this is probably the fight on the card I'm personally most interested to watch. I think it's gonna be another dynamite fight, and it's gonna really say a lot because if Fundora wins, that's another huge win for him, and we'll see what goes on with him in the future. But he can leave Tim Tszyu behind, and there's plenty of major fights he can make in the weight class. And if Tszyu, gets the get back, you can maybe put everything up behind him a little bit. What happened, even with the Bakram fight, and he'll be back on top of the division. Certainly, will be the biggest name in the division, and he can go on and have some other big fights too, because that is a very significant weight class right now with a ton of talent in there. So I'm pumped up for that rematch.
And I was just going right there. Is it logical that whoever wins this, that Thurman is the guy waiting in the wings? Because Thurman won a fight in Australia and was waiting to fight Tszyu. Certainly, if Tszyu wins the rematch, that seems logical. But then again, logic and boxing don't always go together. But is it fair to say that Thurman might be in the mix for whoever wins this on Saturday night, Fundora Tszyu?
I do think that's a good possibility. I haven't seen him around, but I'm told Thurman's going to be out here for the fight. Makes sense. Yeah, he wanted to fight. He wanted to fight Tim. That's the reason why he went and fought in Australia in the first place, to help set that up. It didn't happen. I don't think Keith's looking to avoid putting that back together. Certainly, I don't think he would have any issue whatsoever fighting against Fundora. Look, Keith is at the end of his career in terms of like how long, a number of fights he has left, at his age, all that thing. He's had injuries, but he's healthy now coming out of the last fight. He'd like to put a few more dollars in the bank. He needs the money, to be quite frank. And those would be lucrative bouts. They'd be winnable bouts, and be a chance for him. I mean, Keith in some ways is a little underrated. He had a really great run at welterweight. He beat a lot of top guys, but he didn't give Errol Spence a fight, and he never did fight on a regular basis the last. But
it goes, and it goes back to him losing to Manny Pacquiao. It derailed his career. He lost to Pacquiao, then he got injured. He didn't fight very much. He's just been out of sight, out of mind, and that's one of my guys. That's Clearwater, Florida's Keith Thurman. But Pacquiao sent him into that.
That was not his first time having an injury that cost him a lot of time. But if he wants to make the most of the last couple of years of his career,
right,
fighting the winner of this fight would be a perfect situation. And frankly, if you are Fundora or Tszyu and you come out as the winner, he's a guy with an excellent name who you can make it a big event against, particularly if you can't get a fight. Crawford has left the division after one fight, so that's out the window for the time being. If he comes back, I guess maybe after Canelo, which is a possibility. But I'm just saying, that's a very reasonable fight. It's a makeable fight. They're all with PBC. It fits their profile of a fight that they can easily put on as a pay-per-view. So we'll see. But let's get one thing done at a time, which is to see these guys do it in the second fight.
I love Big Dan live in Vegas. Let's go over the rest of the undercard real quick, and I promise we're getting to Oleksandr Usyk and Daniel Dubois' rematch in London, undisputed heavyweight title fight. I fully understand that the Brits are going, why are we talking about this fight card and not the undisputed heavyweight title fight? We're in the United States. Dan is in Vegas, so we're doing that first, but we will give the undisputed heavyweight title fight its due here in a few minutes on the show.
And the undercard for this fight is outstanding. And the undercard for the Usyk and Dubois card is
garbage. The Brits call it rubbish. Garbage. All right, quickly, the undercard. What intrigues you? I mentioned Pitbull Fierro, which was a good fight the first time around, is a rematch also on this undercard. Go down the undercard real quick.
Well, Fierro and Pitbull is a fantastic rematch. Their first fight in February, which was on the undercard of David Morrell and David Benavidez, which I was fortunate to also be at, was outstanding. It's certainly, in my mind, one of the top, 2 or 3 or 4 fights so far this year in terms of if you're making your fight of the year list candidates. They just went in there like the ultimate Mexican warriors and threw down to the highest order and just battled it tooth and nail the entire fight and basically delivered the all-action type of fight that a lot of the fans expected. They're talking the same way that they're going to come to the ring for this fight. I have no doubt in my mind it will be another fun fight. I'm not sure it necessarily can live up to the first fight. We'll see. But it has every earmark of being another outstanding fight. I think one of the things that really had them, geared up for what they did the first time around is, if you remember, right before they did the fight, they had made it like the WBC had created their trophy, not for a world title, but a trophy belt, called it the Aztec Warrior belt, I guess. And they, I saw it like beforehand, a beautiful belt that they produced. They always make great belts. And they had Israel Vasquez's family at ringside. Israel a great Mexican warrior, world champion, been in some awesome fights through his career, particularly the Rafael Marquez fights. But he had passed away, you know, in the recent weeks prior to this event, or a couple of months before the event. So they were honoring him, and his family was there. They presented the family with the belt, and you know, and Fierro and Pitbull know, you know, what's going on, and so they went out there and delivered. I think they were kind of jacked up because of all the attention paid to the family and the memory of Vasquez, and they were like, we want to do it for our guy. And they went out there and they did that. Now, that's not necessarily the case for this fight as far as the family being there, but this is a rematch, and it's another important fight for their careers, because even though it's not like an official eliminator, let's say, certainly the guy that wins is going to be in a great position to challenge for another, or Fierro's never had a world title fight in my recollection. And for Pitbull, you know, a chance maybe to get back in the ring in a world championship fight. He did lose his 140-pound title last year, and I know he'd like to win another one. And this is a great avenue to get there. So that's a great matchup. And then the other pay-per-view fight, as far as what opens the card, you got a featherweight fight. It was upgraded to a title eliminator between Brandon Figueroa and Joet Gonzalez. Figueroa has been a champion in 2 different weight classes. Joet Gonzalez has had world title fights 3 separate times. He's clearly the underdog, but he's usually in good fights. And, you know, I don't think this is like an unwinnable fight for him. Figueroa didn't look great in his last fight. Joet pulled off a mild upset in his previous fight. So we'll see if they can, you know, bring some magic to the ring. And then there's a series of fights. There are 3 bouts that will take place. If you don't buy the pay-per-view, it's still part of the free preliminaries that are on Prime Video. And you got some good names there. And there's some important stuff here. So number 1, you got Gary Russell, former longtime featherweight champion who hasn't fought for 3.5 years, who was off basically, as he said, I was taking care of my family. Remember, their dad had died. He was raising his own family. He's been training his brothers, who are also professional boxers, including Gary Antoine Russell, who is now one of the title holders at 140 pounds. So he decided, I'm coming back. He'd like to get revenge against Mark Magsayo, who cost him his title. He was talking about having a big rivalry regional fight, because they're all from the D.C. area, him, Tank Davis, and Lamont Roach. So any of those would be fun to watch. I actually, I was with Team Russell when I flew out here on Wednesday morning from Washington, D.C. You know, I live in that area, so does Gary and his family. We were all on the same flight together, and Gary, I was sitting in my seat already, and Gary was getting on the plane, and there was like a little bit of a holdup of the folks getting to their seats. And so he kind of looked at me, and we were like, yeah, we recognize each other. Like, hey, what's up, bro? And it was funny because I had just written about his fight in my notebook, and I was on my cell phone. I popped up, I'm like, hey, Gary, I just wrote about
I'm disappointed you didn't get the selfie with him in the aisleway on the plane before the stewardesses were bothering both of you. Go get in your seat, Mr. Russell.
But Gary was there. He was with his brother, Gary Antoine, who was a world champion, was there. A couple other folks from their team. So,
but truthfully, can I interject? Do we know what we're getting here from Gary Russell Jr.? I mean, he's been off for a while. Again, it's the same Pacquiao question. What are we getting?
It's a lot different than Pacquiao. Number 1, he's 37, not 46. Number 2, although not the most active fighter in the world, and was never active when he was a champion, literally fought once per year during a 5-year title reign. But Gary never really took punishment as a fighter. Gary, I suspect, from a damage perspective, he's always been a very outstanding defensive fighter, very, very fast. Doesn't to my knowledge and everything I've known about the family, they don't cut corners when they train. So I'm not saying we're going to see the Gary Russell of prospect of the year type Gary Russell. And I've said this before, and I covered Floyd, and I covered Roy Jones, and I've covered a lot of great fighters who are very, very fast. To me, Gary Russell is the fastest fighter I ever saw in my own eyes. Period.
Interesting.
So he's immensely talented. And we'll see. I mean, at 37, I feel like he did waste a lot of good years. But if he can come back and score a couple of wins, he can be back in it. But you got to make the commitment to be a little bit more active. So he's on one of those fights. Magsayo, who beat him for the title back before this 3.5-year sabbatical, he's on the card. Now he's fighting at 130. Gary is moving up to 135. But he would like to have a rematch with Magsayo to avenge that. I don't know how realistic that would be if there's no title, but it's still something that could be there. And then also on this card, and it's maybe not the highest profile fight, but you've got Alan David Picasso, the 122-pound contender. He's fighting one of the Kameda cousins from Japan in a 10-rounder on this undercard. But it's very critical for him, because if he wins this fight, he's going to be Naoya Inoue's opponent to challenge for the undisputed title in December in Saudi Arabia.
Interesting.
Inoue has already won his interim bout, which was the Cardenas fight that was back in May. He has his fight coming up in September that he has to win also against MJ Akhmadaliev. But now, before any of that, this guy's got to win this fight. I mean, Inoue, well, if Inoue wins September and Picasso loses, they'll get a new opponent for Inoue. But Picasso got to win this fight to secure his place in that
huge
fight.
moment for him, because that's a golden ticket for that December fight. Obviously, you're right.
Yeah, no, he's an exciting fighter. Picasso, I've seen him fight, a bunch of times. He's kind of fluctuated a little bit between 122 and 126, but he's a good fighter, and I'm not sure what he's going to be able to do with Inoue, but right now it's about getting the opportunity for him.
All right, you did a great job of previewing all of that. Again, if you're finding us live, and a lot of people are finding us live, we are here on YouTube on Thursday afternoon as we do this live with Dan in Las Vegas on the Big Fight Weekend YouTube channel. We remind you that after the fights are all over with on Saturday night, at some point, whenever Big Dan can find a moment and the Wi-Fi, etc., we will be live. Dan will be with us for a few minutes. My buddy Ricky Carroll, who is the managing site editor of BigFightWeekend.com, will be aboard to talk about the Usyk-Dubois fight, whatever happens, because I know that's going to be a challenge for you to watch whatever happens with that while the fight card's going on in the arena at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. We'll obviously pay attention to that. We'll have a recap for a little while on Saturday night, late night Saturday night on this YouTube page. So podcast audience, if you're listening to us only, find us on YouTube Saturday night if you want the live post-fight immediate reaction. Not the full reaction from Dan, because Dan's going to be busy going every which direction, but stay tuned. That'll be coming live. We'll get to Usyk and Dubois in a couple of moments, but the commenters are off the chain right now. Let me go back and see.
I haven't seen them, actually. I got to look at this.
Let's see. Wait a minute. So Nando wants to know that your room, he says your room looks like the guiding light with soft lighting, like the soap opera. I'm not sure what that's all about.
So I will say something about that, by the way.
Okay, go ahead.
I have come to Vegas for fights well over like 130 or 40 times or something like that over my time of doing it. Most of those fights have been at the MGM, where I've stayed either T-Mobile or MGM. So I always stay at the MGM Grand. I've stayed there more than 1 year of my life has been in the MGM Grand. Like, I joke they should have a suite with my name on it because I'm there all the time. Ridiculous. For this particular fight, the Grand Tower, which is the main tower in the MGM, is under a renovation right now. So there's a lot of, they're down like 1 million rooms that are not available. So the press media block is not at this hotel. It's at the Park MGM. Like my man Mauricio Suleiman and a lot of the other dignitaries and officials, et cetera, some of the undercards or whatever, they're staying at the Mandalay Bay and the Luxor. People are like all over the place. So I was like, I'm not going to stay at the Park MGM. I don't like that hotel. The rate was more expensive than I wanted to pay, certainly more than what I ended up getting where I am. So at the MGM, there's another hotel that I know about, but I've never really been in. It's kind of to the side, called the Signature. One of my buddies was like, you should check the Signature. I'm like, that's a good idea. So I did. I used my AAA card, got a little bit more of a discount.
Listen to Rafael going in as the veteran traveler. I love this. Get the discounts. Do it.
So they have an affiliation with Marriott. I have a Marriott card, so I booked through Marriott, got a little bit more of a discount, used the AAA card, brought in my number for less than I would have if I stayed at the other place. I'm on property still, much closer to like the Grand Garden Arena and the Media Center. And I have to say, I got a pretty nice fucking room. I got they're all suites in this hotel. It's nice. I can't complain.
All right.
And I'm capable of complaining.
Yeah, you do complain from time to time. All right. So wait a minute. I'm going to get a couple of more comments in here from different people. I'm having to look through all of it because a lot of the same people are commenting. Louise says, what's up, Dan? It's an honor. I think a lot of them are watching us in England, by the way, and are curious about all of this. Somebody was complimenting you. Sly says you have the most realistic approach in picking fights. No emotional fanboy attached. Thank you, Sly. We're buttering up Rafael. It's early on a Thursday. We're buttering up Rafael. My buddy David Payne, the boxing writer, is in here. He says it will say much about the meaning of these titles if Pacquiao pulls this off. 4 years retire, age 46. Absolutely knackered when he knackered, the British word, when he last fought.
Well,
you touched on this a few minutes ago, though. Pacquiao picks the spot here against a fighter that is not a pound-for-pound fighter. He has one of the titles. This is not fighting Jaron Ennis. This is not, much less, fighting Terrence Crawford, who was the welterweight champion. No disrespect to Barrios having the title, but he's not an all-time guy. That's kind of what David means here. Go ahead.
He does have the title, and I'm not exactly sure of the definition of knackered, but I think it means he didn't do really very well. So if that's the case, when he lost the fight to Ugas in their fight, which was right before Manny retired, yeah, he lost on points, but it was not like a terrible performance. It was a close competitive fight, and he lost by, a couple of points. Right. I mean, it wasn't like he got blown away. He didn't get knocked out. And Ugas at his absolute best was maybe not an A fighter, probably like a B plus fighter.
I call him a B fighter, right.
Maybe slightly.
But he was really good that night. He understood jab, straight right hand behind it, stay away from Pacquiao, win the fight, and he executed.
So, again, it's not like he got savaged and he was sent into retirement.
Right.
The reality is, off that loss, there's zero question in my mind that Manny would have continued to fight. The retirement was really based on his political aspirations. He felt like, I can't be an active boxer while also trying to run for the president of the Philippines. They would not accept that. So he retired for those reasons. The expectation, and they talked about this even before the Ugas fight, that if the time came where he lost or he retired and he ran and he was going to run for president, he was going to have to retire. But if he lost the election, he would come back. He did lose the election. They went to try to make a fight with Conor Benn with Turki Al-Sheikh last year. It didn't end up happening. There was lots of other fights that were sort of thrown around. He then ran for another term in the Senate. He already served a previous term in the Senate. He didn't win that election either. And when that happened, obviously the writing was on the wall. He's coming back. It just so happened Barrios had a belt. It wasn't like they went to cherry pick him. They wanted to fight anybody that had a title. He had the belt of the WBC, which is an organization Manny has held titles in for many, many years throughout his career. Most of his world titles have been WBC titles, and they're all but TBC. So it was relatively easy to make. So, some people look at it a lot more nefarious in the way that he made the comeback. I don't look at it like that. He was always looking to come back, and this made a lot of sense.
And maybe it's going to be a joke Saturday. You said that at the beginning. I've said it all along. Maybe it is going to be a joke. We're going to find out. All right, real quick, couple more comments. What is this? JexDD1617 says, Big Fight Weekly pod as reliable as a Swiss clock. Appreciate the commitment. We appreciate you for finding us here on the show or on the podcast. Anything else of relevance? Not at the moment. Keep the comments coming if you would like. All right, let's get to Oleksandr Usyk, Daniel Dubois, the sequel. This is in London, Wembley Stadium, Saturday afternoon, U.S. time. Saturday night, obviously, in the UK. Your initial thoughts here. The first go-around is an Usyk TKO win.
No, knockout win.
Knockout win, right. He stayed on one. He stayed on one knee for the 10 count right after the shot to the eye.
He quit on a jab.
Which I still maintain that's the fractured eye from before, and I'm not so sure it didn't get re-injured that night as well. Nonetheless, Usyk has been different since then, has accrued the IBF title, has knocked out Anthony Joshua. What are your thoughts here on this undisputed title fight? Usyk, 3 of the belts, Dubois, 1 of the titles. What are your thoughts on the rematch here in London?
Well, I look back at the first fight, and it was a complete demolition job. Daniel Dubois was not competitive. Daniel Dubois complained about a phantom low blow, and Daniel Dubois quit from a jab on his knee. There's a lot of negativity associated with that. So if you want to be a real dick about it, that's what you could say. But, and there you have to also give credit where it is due. So he came off of that horrendous performance. It was a low blow, according to me, to many others, and most importantly to the referee. So that was that. And he still had, after that incident occurred, if he really thought he had him hurt from a legal punch, he certainly could have tried to make hay with that because it was only round 5 when that happened. There was still more than half of the fight left, and he couldn't do anything with Oleksandr Usyk, who ended up knocking him out. Oleksandr Usyk is a future Hall of Famer, an all-time great fighter, undisputed cruiserweight champion, undisputed heavyweight champion, Olympic gold medalist. There's nothing he has not done. He is undefeated, and he rightly is the favorite in this rematch. However, if you're a Dubois believer, he's done it the right way to come back because he didn't just come off that terrible loss to Usyk in the first fight and go and take a couple of, soft touches and score a couple of early KOs and pronounce himself, I'm ready to be back, in the big fight. No, he went out and he earned the shot. So you can't be upset that he's getting another opportunity despite the one-sided nature of that fight. Like you said, he's won fights. He's looked good. He knocked out Jarrell Miller, who was undefeated. Good win. He stopped on a series of terrible cuts in a terrific fight against Filip Hrgović, who was undefeated. And that was to give him the interim belt. And then after that, he was elevated. He made his first defense in spectacular fashion as again the underdog against the big favorite Anthony Joshua at Wembley Stadium. And TJ, he didn't just win, and he didn't just score a knockout. He scored devastating knockdown after knockdown after knockdown, and finally put him out with what was a candidate for the knockout of the year.
And truthfully, Oleksandr Usyk fought Anthony Joshua for 24 rounds and never hurt him and knocked him down or knocked him out.
Well,
I mean, he may have hurt him, but he didn't knock him down and knock him out. Yeah,
that is correct. So he performed better in the Joshua head-to-head comparison that Usyk had. Now, it is for the undisputed title, but I kind of laugh at the whole nonsense of that, because the reality is Oleksandr Usyk fought Tyson Fury. He had 3 belts. Tyson Fury was the lineal champion, had the WBC title, and Usyk beat him in the 2024 fight of the year. Fantastic fight, historic fight, became the undisputed champ. And when they fought the rematch, because he was obligated to do the rematch, the IBF did what it did, which is IBF things, as I always discuss.
Right.
And he was forced to vacate the title. So Usyk no longer had that belt, and you have Dubois, who had gotten the interim belt, which that was the IBF breaking their rules to allow that interim title fight to happen. I don't need to go over the chapter and verse of the minutia. We could do a whole show about that. But he got the interim belt, and then because of the contractual situation, he was elevated when Usyk was forced to vacate. So really, Usyk is just trying to go back to get a belt that he really was never rightfully, that he didn't rightfully be stripped of. He didn't lose it in the ring. So yeah, it's like a technicality. But yeah, whoever wins this fight's undisputed, because they're going to have all the belts and they're going to be the lineal champion. But Usyk is, he didn't somehow miraculously get this IBF by beating the guy that had it, which was Usyk. As a matter of fact, if my memory is correct, wasn't one of those fights on their undercard or in close proximity to the fight, whatever.
I do know that it may have been the Jarrell Miller fight was on the undercard of the first Usyk Fury, I think. But nonetheless, the bottom line is, how much bigger of a threat do you consider Dubois this time around? Do you consider him a significant threat to Usyk this go around?
Absolutely, I do, because he is still a younger fighter. He's only 27 years old. He has a tremendous amount of confidence. I'm looking here. He was not on those undercards. He has a tremendous amount of confidence. And besides what he's done with those 3 big wins that I just mentioned between Miller and Hrgovic and, of course, Anthony Joshua, even though Oleksandr Usyk is a phenomenal fighter, like a literal, legit all-time type of great fighter, the fights he's had since Dubois are 2 brutal, hard, tough, very, very hard fights against Tyson Fury, particularly the first fight. And that takes something out of you. And he's also 38 years old. He's also had a long career, not necessarily in terms of the number of pro fights, but you combine those fights, and he fought everybody. He had some tough battles. He also had a zillion amateur fights and a very long amateur career. My point is, he's not young in his career. So while he's still outstanding, I think you can fairly say, by watching those Fury fights, there's some degree of slippage. He's not down the mountain yet, but he's not at his absolute apex. And once the gap, when you're at that elite level, when the gap closes just a little bit, it brings the other guy closer to you, and so that gives him a better chance. So while I still view Oleksandr Usyk as the clear favorite in this fight, the combination of the confidence, the punching power, the fact they've already had the rounds with each other together, so they've both been able to learn more about the other guy. I do think that gives Daniel Dubois a little bit more of a chance.
And the other thing that we'll get into a little more, we'll preview these fights and handicap them further on the BetUS boxing show on their platform on Friday, as the fight is at Wembley Stadium. And so it's the first time for Usyk since he fought Anthony Joshua back in 2021 at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's the first time that Usyk has had to fight kind of in the other guy's backyard, in Dubois' backyard. Will that be a factor?
Whoa. You totally lost me there. Oleksandr Usyk has spent his entire championship career fighting in everybody's backyard.
Well, correct. But the last 3 fights, have been 2 with Fury in Saudi Arabia, neutral field, kind of, and then he fought in Poland when he fought Dubois and knocked him out. Here he's got to be on the road. Will Dubois be inspired by the Wembley crowd? We'll find out.
I'm sure he'll be inspired by the Wembley crowd, but how Usyk takes it is like he is.
You don't think it's a factor?
Yeah. No, I mean, he's the fucking road warrior. The guy fought every championship fight he had. He had 1 or 2 that were on neutral territory, like when he fought, Tabiso Machunu in Los Angeles, a South African against a Ukrainian in Los Angeles. But his other fights, he fought Michael Hunter.
Only my man Rafael could come up with that name. I don't even know that name. And is that a real name? The guy that you just listed that
I was
Usyk
at the
fought
fight
in LA. All right, what's the name again? Only you could come up with that name.
No, on the night that Joe Smith retired Bernard Hopkins, the co-feature of that show was Oleksandr Usyk defending his cruiserweight belt against Machunu, who was from South Africa.
There we go.
But besides that fight, if you take a look at the title fights,
they've all been.
He fought Myris Bradis in the cruiserweight division. He fought Bradis in Latvia. He fought the unification for undisputed against Gassiev in Russia, which was Gassiev's home country.
Mm-hmm.
He fought Marco Huck, a German fighter, in Germany. He fought Michael Hunter, an American, in America. Point is, and he fought Anthony Joshua twice in London. In London.
He fought him once in London and once in Saudi Arabia. He fought Joshua.
He also fought. It wasn't a title fight, but he fought Derek Chisora in England.
Yep. All right.
Usyk, the notion that Usyk would be in any way unnerved, freaked out, or anything by fighting the other guy's hometown, to me is not. But
I posed it more as how much does it inspire Dubois? We'll find out. And there's only so much the crowd can do for you.
The only time he's ever had since pre-championship, because he did fight a few early fights in Ukraine before the war and everything. When he fought Dubois, the reason they fought in Poland is because it's so close to the Ukrainian border.
Yes.
The border is the country, and it's got millions of Ukrainians.
That live there. That's correct.
Some who are there because they've been there for a long, long time, and obviously many who were displaced because of the war and were refugees that were living there. So it was the closest place they could have a fight that would give him at least some type of home type of flavor.
Again, we'll handicap fights on the BetUS platforms 1 Eastern time. Dan Rafael, 10 a.m. in Las Vegas. Get that time zone correct there for that. I
had my time zone issues today, TJ.
You're all good. All right. And then there's more. There is the Jesse Bam Rodriguez Junior Bantamweight Unified title fight with Cafu, the South African. This is Frisco, Texas, Saturday night in the Matchroom DAZN main event. All right, give me you talked to Bam Rodriguez in the lead up to this fight. Again, the fans can watch Manny Pacquiao, Mario Barrios, Daniel Dubois, and Jesse Rodriguez. My man Rafael's been killing it with the interviews.
It's too much.
All 4 of those interviews are live to tape on this YouTube channel. Go back and relive them. You talked to Bam in the last couple of weeks about this matchup with Cafu and what's on the table for him. Unified junior bantamweight title fight. Give me a little more in the preview mode here.
Well, first of all, in terms of the schedule, the powers that be in this sport are just terrible, because for them to take these 3 sort of marquee type events and put them on the same day, this ain't basketball or football where, you've a typical NFL Sunday, there's a lot of great games. It is just ridiculous. And especially with the Bam fight and the Usyk and Dubois rematch, because they're both on the same platform. And I grant that they're not going to overlap with each other to some degree, but they shouldn't be on the same day, particularly when you also have Manny Pacquiao. So, a pox on everybody's house that puts these fights on at the same time.
I love that.
Particularly when there's not that much going on next week, and it's just like
the following week.
And
correct.
The following week. So there's other times, but whatever. But the fight itself, look, Bam has been a tremendous fighter. He's one of the top pound for pound fighters in boxing. He had been a champion in the junior bantamweight division. He vacated his titles. He moved down in weight. He became a unified title holder in the flyweight division, and then said, "Okay, I'm good, and I'm moving back up." And he came back to that weight class, and he did the job on Juan Francisco Estrada, a future Hall of Famer, knocked him out. It was a terrific fight. Got that victory, and then made a mandatory defense. 2 great knockouts last year. He destroyed Guevara in a knockout of the year type of knockout.
Yep.
And he was looking for the unification. Now his team was talking to Fernando Martinez, Puma Martinez, about doing a unification fight. And as Bam said to me in our interview, one day that sort of just disappeared, and it sort of fell down, and for whatever the reason was, it wasn't going to happen. So he was sort of not sure what was going on. He didn't have a fight scheduled. He wanted another unification fight, and so at that moment the IBF title was vacant, and that left the options to either try to make the Martinez fight again or to pursue Phumelele Cafu, who had gone to Japan, first time leaving his home country of South Africa. He had scored an upset against Tanaka to win the title, and then all of a sudden, okay, I'll fight Bam, because Cafu maybe could have lost to anybody. Clearly the biggest money he could make. He wanted to unify also. Matter of fact, when he won the title, when his post-fight interview in the ring in Japan, he said, "I want to fight Jesse Bam Rodriguez." And by the way, TJ, there ain't a lot of guys calling out Jesse
calling him
Ventura.
out. Yeah, I agree.
So that was I felt good about that. I'm like, okay, this guy's showing some real vigor here, some real interest. So he's going to Frisco, Texas. It's not exactly a hometown fight for Jesse because he's from San Antonio, but it might as well be. He's a Texan, and it's not that far away. And
regional fight, right?
He's
Regional
coming
fight
across the world again from South Africa. But Cafu is not a very experienced fighter at the highest level other than Tanaka. He only had the one fight outside of his home country. There's good fighters in South Africa, but if you look at his record and his resume, there's not a lot of names to go by. He's only 11-0-3, so he doesn't have a tremendous amount of professional experience. And so obviously Bam is a heavy favorite. But what makes it more significant, besides just the fact that the winner is going to have these two titles, both the WBO and the WBC, not to mention the lineal as well. But in the 2 weeks leading up to the fight, you have Turki Al-Sheikh announcing that if Bam is the winner, when they do their big show on November 22nd in Riyadh, which is headlined by David Benavidez against Anthony Yard, we'll have Devin Haney on there in the challenge at welterweight against Brian Norman. It's just a loaded show. That one of the fights on that card will also be Bam in a 3-belt unification fight against Fernando Puma Martinez. So he's getting the fight he wanted. It's just not going to be in Frisco on Saturday. It is going to have to wait until November in Saudi Arabia. But to get there, he's got to win the fight. So that puts some pressure on him and makes what was already a very interesting fight even that much more interesting.
All right, we look forward to that. Again, that is Saturday night, probably along the same time frame as either the Fundora Tszyu co-feature or the Pacquiao-Barrios main event. Bam Rodriguez fighting on DAZN with Cafu from South Africa, 115-pound unification world title fight. We're about to be done on the preview. You got a little other fight news. Speaking of Turki Al-Sheikh and the Ring TV arm and more. We've got some fights being firmed up. He did put it out on social media that they're not going to do pay-per-views anymore for the Ring cards and for the Riyadh season. That may have something to do with the fact that not a whole lot of people are buying the pay-per-views. Those two things can be connected. But what else fight news wise do we have real quick?
Well, that's the big thing. Turki announced on Wednesday that he had a meeting with the CEO of DAZN in London, which is where he is because he's attending the fight that's taking place this weekend between Oleksandr Usyk and Dubois, and they met and they've decided that they're no longer going to do pay. I can't speak for DAZN as a totality of a company because remember they have done pay-per-views with Jake Paul and that sort of thing.
That's right,
and whatever. And who knows what Matchroom will wind up doing, or if Frank Warren will want to do some other pay-per-view activity or any other promoter that they may work with. But in terms of the Riyadh season cards and the Ring magazine events, he said we're no longer going to do pay-per-views, which is great because there's been a ton of pay-per-views. If you look at the DAZN schedule between April and August, they have 6 pay-per-views, not all Ring and Riyadh season, but 6 pay-per-views. And if you add up the total cost of all of those events, you're talking about an amount of money that is probably almost as much as if you bought DAZN for a whole year for the rest of the fights that they get. So they're doing away with it. Now, this will start not right away. So Saturday's Dubois and Usyk fight is still a pay-per-view on DAZN. The August card that's in Riyadh with Moses Itama against Dylan White, that's still a pay-per-view. But starting with their November 22nd card that we just mentioned, that's the big one. That's going to have Haney against Brian Norman and Bam if he wins against Martinez and Benavidez against Anthony Yard, not to mention Abdullah Mason against Sam Noakes, which is a fucking loaded show. That will not be a pay-per-view. That will be free to subscribers the same way Netflix is making Canelo and Crawford free to subscribers, the same way Netflix did the same with Mike Tyson against Jake Paul, and then last week's show with the women, the big loaded women's card topped off by Amanda Serrano in the third fight with Katie Taylor. So this is a positive development. And it wasn't just Turki that was saying it. It was the DAZN CEO that went on his social media and said the same thing, that we support this. We're going to grow boxing. So, look, this is how DAZN came to be in the first place, right? When they started their service in the United States in 2018, it had been around for a couple years before that. But when they entered the American market and they were going to make boxing a very big cornerstone of what their programming offerings were, pay-per-view was dead. And I've said this before. I came to Las Vegas. I believe it was the Canelo Alvarez versus Danny Jacobs fight. And it was at the T-Mobile Arena. And in the big plaza that's right out front of the arena, they had literally a big tent. and there was a big sign on top that said PPV is dead, and they were giving like fans, you could walk into this tent with a hammer and smash the TV, like symbolic of no more pay-per-view.
And you want to confirm you did not do that? You did not go hit the TV with the sledgehammer that pay-per-view was dead?
That is correct. I did not do that. But that was the point, though, that they were making, and they advertised, they made funny videos
right
about no more pay-per-view.
And then they turned right around about 3 Canelo fights in and started putting his fights on pay-per-view.
And not just Canelo fights, but they were putting like Regis Prograis against Devin Haney, and you know, and they would do things that made no sense to me. Like in the British market, for them to serve up Conor Benn against Chris Eubank on pay-per-view, that makes sense. To have Conor Benn against Chris Eubank as a pay-per-view in other markets around the world seemed nonsensical. The only big show they did that was related to Riyadh, and I'm not sure why this one was different than the other ones, was, if you remember, in November of last year, they did the Latino night. That was Zerto against Billum Smith and a lot of other good matchups. That fight was free for everybody. But
with your subscription, it was not pay-per-view. Right.
That is correct. And so now going forward, in beginning with the November show, they claim that all these Ring Magazine and Riyadh season cards will be free.
Stay tuned.
Your subscription. Now, you have to ask the question, okay, that's good, and thank you. We appreciate that as boxing fans. But how much is that going to mean another subscription increase?
That's
obviously,
right.
You know, we'll see.
They're going to jack the prices. We'll see on that. Hey, one other item. I just saw this on social media earlier this afternoon. Lamont Roach has apparently confirmed he's not fighting Gervonta Davis. No big surprise there in August. But Lamont Roach said, something you alluded to, we're not even sure if we're going to get to fight him again right now with his legal troubles and whatever. Do you know any more about the legs for a Roach fight with Shakur Stevenson, somebody else? Or is the Roach camp just, we don't know for sure. Are they just going to sit and float along and wait on is Gervonta Davis available? But Lamont Roach said on the record, we don't know if we're fighting Gervonta Davis next now or not, if there even is a fight.
They do have a contract to fight Lamont Roach. That's the first thing. So they'd have to deal with that aspect of it. I think what he means is because there's the
legal troubles.
Yeah, right. It's just there's not a lot of clarity on whether or not Davis will be available, and if he is available, when he'll be available, because of the legal troubles and everything that goes around that. So the fact that he's not fighting August 16th, I could have told you that even before Tank got arrested.
Right.
Go back, 3 weeks ago, there was almost no chance that was happening, and all the things that should get done that hadn't gotten done before you have a pay-per-view. Now, I may not have been in touch directly with Lamont himself, but I have been in regular touch with key people on Lamont Roach's team on a almost daily basis for the last couple of weeks, and they are very frustrated. They don't have answers from PBC, and I'm not blaming PBC because I think they don't have answers from Tank Davis. And you can't make any decisions because Team Roach and PBC, they don't control the legal system that's going on in South Florida. So everything is up in the air now. As far as another fight that's being pursued, I don't think there's anything to that that's happened yet, because they still have to wait to see what's going to happen in terms of their own contractual obligations with the fight. So if it is determined that he's not going to be available for a period of time, certainly they're going to want to pursue some other fight. They're not going to just let a guy coming off such a great performance against such a big name just rot on the vine and not try to take advantage. But by the same token, they had a lot of money riding on the rematch, and we'll see if they can secure another fight that would come even close to that kind of money.
All right, I know you want to get out of here, too, because you got stuff to do in Las Vegas, but we got a lot of peeps asking questions. Real quick, Aaron wants to know, is Usyk fighting Fury in 2026, like Turkey said, official, assuming that Usyk wins Saturday? Did Turkey Al-Sheikh ever say, yeah, that's definitely happening, or did Fury more so say, hey, it's going to happen, we'll make it happen? I can't remember.
It was Turkey that said April 2026, Fury, Usyk 3, but I don't think that's official because, if Usyk doesn't win, I don't think there's going to be a big public demand to see the third fight. I frankly think even if he does win,
I don't think there is
demand either. So, but one thing I'll say, if it does happen, supposedly it won't be on pay-per-view. So, okay.
Allegedly. Jack brings up this point, too. He says, do you like it when fighters have fights set up down the line? Can fighters get distracted? Whether it's Usyk in this case, you mentioned Bam Rodriguez has something potentially lurking. You mentioned, David Allen Picasso on the undercard of the Pacquiao pay-per-view. He may have Inoue in December. What about already having the carrot out there? We've seen this
Well, I mean,
Ryan Garcia lost with the Devin Haney rematch looming,
100%.
right? It happened.
Inoue has his fight coming up in September, also before December. To me, the biggest one in history that I can think of, because maybe it's not the biggest in history, but for me, it was just so stupid that they did the interim fight. You had, I'm going to date myself, you had Lennox Lewis as the heavyweight champion, and you had Tommy Morrison, or, at the time, actually, Tommy had I guess he was the WBO champion, but he had a fight set up with Lennox Lewis. It was done, signed. $8-something million for Tommy to win, if he won the interim fight. Or not if he won the interim fight, if he didn't take the interim fight and just fought Lennox, an $8 million contract. $8 million back is a lot of money anyway, but back then was astronomical.
Yeah, 30 years ago.
He decided, I'm going to take a hometown fight against a little-known guy named Michael Bent. And he went in the ring and he got his ass kicked. He got knocked the fuck out in the first round. Lennox Lewis fight, and the payday went away. Now, he ultimately fought Lennox a few years later, but it wasn't for the title, and it wasn't nearly the money, and it was the dumbest move in the history of boxing to me, to take that kind of gamble for no reason. Now, do I like it? I mean, I don't like it. I don't dislike it. I think it's kind of stupid for sometimes in certain instances to do that for no apparent reason. And remember when back years ago you had Bernard Hopkins and Oscar De La Hoya fighting on the same card in a doubleheader to set up their fight against each other. And Bernard Hopkins defended his middleweight title, and he had 3 of the belts. And you had Oscar De La Hoya, who ended up winning the WBO belt against Felix Sturm. Everybody knows Oscar didn't win that fight. He got a gift that night, and that was the matter to keep that fight together. It happens all the time, man.
And Wilder and Joshua were slated to meet, and Wilder looked awful against Joseph Parker and lost.
They had a signed contract. So
it happens when you're looking ahead.
But there are certain fighters that are able to focus and to put that aside and not let that bother them. I think Usyk, whether the third fight with Fury is real or not, Usyk's the perfect kind of guy that wouldn't be unnerved for 1 second. He's like a metronome. He doesn't give a shit. He just goes in the ring and does the fight, and then whatever happens after happens.
Absolutely.
Anyway, it's a reasonable question, but I don't really have a strong opinion either way about it.
And for Usyk, again, this would be another rematch win if he gets it. Rematch win over Joshua, rematch win over Fury. Does he get another one over Dubois? And then you really start asking what's really left for him to prove and demonstrate. Okay, one more time before we're gone. We are sponsored by our friends at ppv.com. Those on the video part of this show and podcast are seeing it. If you're only hearing us, go use our friends at ppv.com. One-off purchase, Dan Rafael, for the Pacquiao-Barrios pay-per-view on Saturday night. No long-term subscription needed. 4K video quality. Catch the entire pay-per-view. Great interactive stuff that's going on with different hosts and analysts that are there in Las Vegas that are interacting with the fans. It's a great experience. And again, no long-term commitment with ppv.com. They are proud sponsors of what we do. And we look forward to whatever's going to happen coming on Saturday night in Las Vegas. Just watch it with ppv.com. Go right there and order up the pay-per-view. No long-term commitment. All right, we've come to the end of the preview. You're going to write much more on your Substack, the Fight Freaks Unite Substack and newsletter, and your social media as well.
I gotta make a little plug for the Substack real quick, because I'm working my ass off on it. And
I've noticed.
I hope that our viewers and our listeners are subscribed. But if you're going to help the cause and you're going to upgrade to a paid subscription, I am in the middle of my summer sale. Get 10% off between now and
Benevolent Raphael is unusual, but Benevolent Raphael is here. Listen up, peeps. Summer sale going on for the Substack. Go ahead.
So take advantage. Get your 10% off, and it's all you can eat. You can get everything that's behind the paywall, including you name it, whatever you need. I do put out some free stuff, obviously, but you get everything. All the notebooks.
For example, you put out, you ranked Manny Pacquiao's 8 world titles in 8 different divisions. Which one is which? That's good for debate.
With Manny's input.
Yes, and you also break a lot of news that goes behind that paywall as well. So again, take advantage of the summer sale. danrafael.substack.com, the Fight Freaks Unite Substack. Take advantage of that for this weekend. All right, I will see you again on Friday at 1 Eastern time on the BetUS platforms, their YouTube, their social media. You and I will predict the fights, including Pac-Man and Barrios, including Usyk-Dubois, the rematch, Bam Rodriguez's junior bantamweight title defense. Let's do that on Friday. And I say once again, make sure that you are subscribed here. Make sure you have the notification, etc., because whatever happens coming on Saturday night, we're going to go live with a recap show right here on this YouTube channel. The first time that you'll get recap reaction will be on the YouTube channel. For the podcast audience, you'll eventually get a podcast recap, but we're doing this on YouTube with some exclusive, unique content that's there first. Other than that, it's midday for you in Vegas. Go have fun. I can't be in charge of your social calendar here for the next 48 hours before the fight. You and I saw Jerry Seinfeld, by the way, 2 years ago for the Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence big welterweight showdown. We saw Jerry Seinfeld a couple of nights before. That was hilarious. I don't know what else you're up to. I don't know if you're going to hit the craps table later. You got to go see Celine Dion. Is she still there, or Adele, or somebody else? I don't know. I can't be responsible.
No idea who's here singing. And I'm not like a big.
I saw Rick Springfield. Rick Springfield still going around. You know Rick Springfield, right? You're feeling me from the 80s. You better love somebody. Rick Springfield. I saw him at the MGM Grand.
That's not even his most famous song, by the way.
Okay, but Rick Springfield with Mrs. Rives at the MGM Grand was outstanding. We saw him nearly 30 years ago. He's doing this futuristic show where he's flying around the MGM Grand concert hall on a saucer. And I kid you not, Rayfield, the next week in July of 98, he fell off the saucer and broke his arm and couldn't do the show for like another 6 weeks. So we felt fortunate to see him. So if you see Rick Springfield, tell him hello from the Reeves. While you're out there. Las Vegas.
No, not going to do that.
All right. Great stuff on this. Again, we'll see you on the Bet US show. And again, for the YouTube audience, a recap pod Saturday night at some point late. Other than that, thank you, Dan Rafael, as always. Have a great weekend, and we'll see what Manny Pacquiao has left, if anything, in this fight coming up on Saturday night. Thank you, Dan. Be well.
Yes, sir.
See you later. There we go. We are done for this edition of the Big Fight Weekend Preview, the show on YouTube, and the preview pod. Bye.